All right, good evening, good evening, good evening. We are going to keep going in Esther tonight, chapters 2 through chapter 4. Yes, we are going to cover 3 chapters. Should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Quick recap. Pastor Jason, how many were here last week? Yeah, good. Okay, good. He was on fire, wasn't he? I know. We talked about it the next day. I was like, we're going to just put the quarter in you every single time now, because now we know. Not that we've never seen it before, but yeah, there was just something special on last week, so I'm glad he introduced the book. He set the rest of us up beautifully by discussing that the book is a book about deliverance. I find it interesting that the story of Israel's history in the Old Testament starts with a deliverance, right? The book of Exodus. And this is the last known historical book of like this time period. And now this whole time period outside of the book of Nehemiah, like we're ending with another big deliverance. So there's a massive theme throughout Scripture, right? What could it be? Deliverance. There we go. Oh, man. Now, you guys took a huge risk there. I was like, beep, beep, beep. What is, I know it, but I don't want to say it. Deliverance. And so chapter 2 is where we've gotten the backdrop from chapter 1. Remember, we've got King Xerxes throwing a massive party, 6 months plus a week. You got to add that on there because that's a mega party. And, calls the queen, Vashti, who's the queen at the time, come before him and all of his boys when they're thrown down at the kegger. And she refuses, and she is then banished from the kingdom, and a giant edict is made, basically putting women in their place within the Empire of Persia. And we are still in Susa, the capital, starting in chapter 2. And really now the story is beginning to unfold. And so we are going to be introduced into a couple new characters in the next couple chapters. We'll discuss them as we cross their paths. We've already been introduced to Esther. This is her Persian name. Also, her Hebrew name is Hadassah. Hadassah means myrtle. That's what I thought. And Esther's interesting. I believe she's named after one of the Persian goddesses of love and war. So that's very interesting because we will see that she very much takes on those attributes throughout the book as she comes into this place of first, right, love with Xerxes. And then later on, she becomes really this massive voice within the kingdom. So that is the name that the Persians gave her. And we also know about Ahasuerus, but that's not how you pronounce it according to the Bible. According to you click the button, they're like, Ahasuerus. You know that one where you click it and it just keeps saying it? Ahasuerus. Jay, how do you say it? I botch it every time, so I just go with what I always heard in Bible college, and that's Ahasuerus, but it's not right. And then Xerxes is his Hebrew, or is his Persian name. And like Jay had said last week, means the king of men, or the kind of the hero of heroes, kind of this double exemplary emphasis on that. Jay also mentioned that the book is a book about reversals. We're going to cover a couple of them. There's one that happens right away here in the first chapter, chapter 2. And then ultimately what we're setting up is this massive, massive reversal that is going to begin to unfold right away in chapter 2, but really chapter 3 is the beginning. If you understand storytelling, you've got a couple of protagonists that appear here in chapter 2, and then the main antagonist shows up in chapter 3, and that's a guy by the name of Haman, and that's ultimately where our story begins to really unfold. But I want you to understand that we are really trying to get you guys to think about this theme about reversals, okay? Because God is doing that right now in the earth. I'm going to just give you just some prophetic insight just because I believe there's no such thing as a coincidence, okay? Like, we like to think there are in the West because we have things like Irish luck and we've got all of these phenomenons that happen within our Western world, but we like to think that we are the creators of phenomenon. right? We like to think that we're the one that institute these phenomena because we've created such amazing things, technology and all of these things that humans have produced. We like to think that we created these things. But God told me something years ago, and he was like, Jordan, nothing happens in the earth that I don't allow. Right? Nobody who is staunchly political likes to admit that, right? Because when your opposing party wins, the devil won. But the truth is, as Daniel tells us, that God is actually responsible for the rise and fall of kings and their kingdoms. And so nothing happens in the earth, whether we like it or not, right? Whether our opinion matters to the Lord or not. Like, he's going to make his choice, and we don't actually have to understand to be with him. And that's ultimately what reversals do. And so one of the things that I find to be really fascinating about this is that there is this, Jay mentioned it last week, there's this very interesting kind of backdrop to the book that appears godless. Because his name's not mentioned in the book, right? Nobody says God in it. 2 books in the Bible, right? Songs of Songs and Esther, the 2 books we're in right now. Godless community. But I think it's interesting that God is never mentioned, but nothing ever happens without him. Does that make sense? We never mention his name in the book, but if you look at the details, as John Wesley would say, his fingerprints are all over it. Why? Because nothing happens in the earth that God doesn't allow. And so because of it, just because his name's not mentioned doesn't mean his hands are not all over it. And so oftentimes, if we're trusting what you and I can see and we can judge, our judgments are wrong. That's why we were never created with the knowledge of good and evil. You're going to have me preaching now. You're going to have me teaching theology now. We're going to go back to the garden for a sec. This is what God wanted to keep out of humanity. Why? Because our judgments then arise. What does our judgments keep us from? Our ability to love. Because now I love based on a record and not based off of his eyes and his knowledge and his knowing in the earth. I can't judge your heart. So therefore, I shouldn't judge your outward appearance. Because if I'm judging you on your outward appearance, then I'm withholding love from you. Woof. And so I can't help but feel like the culture that I'm living in today is so similar from the culture that Esther, Hadassah, and Mordecai were living in at the time that this book takes place. A fleeting movement from Judaistic culture where the law was once pervasive and everything flowed through it. But now I'm in exile. I'm in a land I do not recognize. And now all of the things that I once longed for and were the fulfillment of all that had been spoken to our fathers and our forefathers before them has now been stripped from us. And now what? I mean, doesn't it feel that way sometimes here in America? Right? I'm not going to make fun of the boomers, but I'm going to quote you. This country was founded on godly values. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm just saying you guys remember a time period where things appeared and seemed and looked and were fashioned in a way that was foundationally Christian. It's not that way right now. And it's okay. It doesn't mean God's not in it. Oof. Oh. Okay, I could hear that. Good. It is as quiet as I thought in here. It's not because God's not in it. God's in it. He's just doing a reversal. Because God uses reversals all the time to communicate ultimately redemption. What was the cross? Not but just the most massive reversal in all of history. A torture device equivalent to the electric chair or worse today, and we wear it around our necks now as a symbol of hope. If that's not a reversal, I don't know what is. Right? Like, you wear a cross around your neck in the Roman days, they're all like, bro, are you asking to die? You welcoming it? You're like, this is how you want to go? Like, they used to line the cities with crosses as you'd walk into them of the people who had broken the laws. And you're like, I don't want to wear that around my neck. It's the greatest reversal in human history. The reversal of a death device to a symbol of hope, life, and resurrection. See, this is what is required at a time like now. True faith. Because the invitation in the midst of a godless book where his fingerprints are all over it is we only see it once we've moved past the story. But I don't want to be one that only has faith looking back going, God, you were in it. I always knew you were big, but I just couldn't see it. And because I didn't see it, I didn't believe you. This is the invitation in the book of Esther, not so that we would see it according to our natural eyes or even begin to judge it according to the judgments of our heart. I can't believe a woman's in power. I don't care what your opinions are. They're not according to his kingdom. His kingdom wanted to use her, so he used her. We don't get to judge that or question it. We just get to do it. I don't know how the Lord's using Joe Biden, but he is. I'm sorry, I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it to know God's moving in our midst. He will reverse all of this. I'm not saying he's going to reverse it and Trump's coming back into president. Please don't put words in my mouth. But what I am saying is that God is prophesying, and Paul even takes it further in Romans 8 when he says, all things work for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. All things, not some things, not good things. He says all things. And this is what we begin to see unplay. And so I want to encourage you tonight that before we even jump into the book, I want to encourage you, if you feel like God is not moving anywhere in your life, I promise he is. If you're looking at your life like, where's God right now? I promise he's in it. I promise he's moving. Keep going. Keep saying yes every single day. Keep waking up and going, I don't understand why I keep struggling with this crappy marriage. If you wake up and you're like, I don't understand why I can't sleep at night, or I don't understand why I have these health problems, or I don't understand why I'm not getting older as gracefully as everyone else around me. He's in it, I promise. There is purpose in everything that's going on in our lives, whether we like it or not. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in my life I do not like. But you want to know what? I know it's all him. I know every bit of it is him. Because I know something. There's a paradox that the cross unleashed. The paradox of the cross is if you move towards pain, you'll reveal his glory. It's everything I don't want to do, but guess what happens if I move towards it? If I just say yes, my yes is so powerful, I begin to manifest a sense of understanding and knowledge and glory that can't be as long as I've got my back turned to what he's trying to lead me towards. Because all of this movement over here that I'm unwilling to look at is where he is, and I'm over here going, Lord, there's no way you're calling me to Nineveh. There's no way. There's no way you're calling me to love that person. They suck. That person hurt me. That person rejected me. That person was never a dad to me. Why would I love them? Why would I forgive them? Why would I move towards them? Because he is. Sorry, you guys got me a little excited. No, you want to know what's funny about this, money? It's so weird you bring that up. Can I tell you what happened to me on Monday? Yeah, okay. You're going to have me going into something I don't want to go into, but I'm just going to tell you what happened to me on Monday, okay? And Pastor Michelle sent me the birthday questionnaire for Elsie and for pastors. She sends this group of 8 questions, and we all have to answer it right around her birthday, and then she types it up in an email, and she sends it out to LC. And it's like, hey, it's this person's birthday. Get to know them. And I'm reading through it, and You want to know what's funny? She has sent me this birthday thing twice now, and I've not filled it out. Just because I'm stubborn. But I'm sitting here, I get it on a Monday. She doesn't email it to me because she knows me. I don't check my emails. So if you've emailed me in the last couple weeks, I got a response last week, but you haven't gotten any responses if you've emailed me recently. And it's not because I don't know they're there. It's just because I hate to do emails. You're just going to hear my honest heart. Jay's looking at me shaking his head like, oh my gosh, you still haven't learned. No. So she texts it to me, and I can't deny it, and I worked on the whole thing, and some of these are questions and answers that you guys would all predict, like, what's your favorite coffee drink? Classic 6-ounce cappuccino. You know, like, these are like things. But we get to this question, and it says, who from past or present would you like to meet and have a meal with? And I start logging through all these incredible people in my brain. And I'm like, Jesus, well, that's stupid. I talk to him every day. I eat every meal with him. So that's not going to be the person I would choose. And then I'm like, do I choose Abraham? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know why I keep thinking about this. And the Lord stops me as soon as I say Abraham. And he goes, you're going to meet Abraham. Don't ask to see him. And I go, okay, good. You're getting my mystical side now. And the Lord says, why do you keep thinking about trying to meet with someone who has impacted history positively? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, don't you know who you are? And I said, yeah, I do. And then all of a sudden I literally heard the Lord say, you would like to have a meal with Hitler. And then I read the question in my head, it says because. And then I heard the Lord say, all he needed was a friend. And I just started bawling. Because all that man's pain is what we all saw. And all he needed was a friend. And we could have reversed all of history. Because the Lord said, Jordan, I can redeem him, but I can't redeem how he's remembered. But if you'd have sat down with him before he actually decided to hate in his heart, you could have befriended him and you could have turned his heart. And I said, yeah, you're right. I could have. And so, no, I'm not saying that God is responsible for the Holocaust. I am saying that God allowed the Holocaust, and I don't know why. But I don't have to know why to know that God moves throughout all of history, and he uses everything to move us towards a telos moment, a last end date moment where all of creation will be drawn back onto him. Because he was obedient unto death. Because he loved humanity. That's all. Sorry. That was a long answer to a question that just kind of caught me off guard because just way too fresh in my heart from Monday. All right. Now that we're 25 minutes into Jordan's life, let's go into Esther's. All right, we're going to read chapter 2 since I'm going to spend a fair amount of time there. We'll summarize chapter 3, and we'll read the end of 4. It says, after these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. If you don't know Persian history, which I didn't until this afternoon, King Ahasuerus just got back from a massive military defeat. He was conquered in 3 separate battles amongst the Greeks, and so he came back slightly sad, ticked off, and very frustrated with his current military ventures. And that he remembered Vashti signifies that the man was lonely. That the man thought, listen, this is what happens when men are humbled. Let's just be honest. All the decisions that we look back on that we made in our arrogance, we begin to regret. Okay? Then the king's attendants who served him said, let beautiful virgins be sought for the king. So these guys are the guys that look at King Ahasuerus, try to read his body language and go, yeah, my man's lonely. His concubines aren't cutting it. The throne next to him is empty. We need to find him a wife. Let the king appoint overseers in all the provinces of this kingdom, that they may gather every beautiful young virgin to the citadel of Susa, to the harem, and into the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let their cosmetics be given them. Then let the young lady who pleases the king be queen in the place of Vashti. And the matter pleased the king, and he did accordingly. Now there was at the citadel in Susa a Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimeah, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Now, does anybody know who has a very similar lineage line that's in the Old Testament? They're trying to make a statement here. Remember when we were in Ezra and Nehemiah and they were constantly trying to make these slight references back to the Exodus? They're trying to make a slight reference back to someone else, Saul. Saul, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. The reason why they're trying to make this insinuation is because we're going to see that the failure of Saul is going to be reduplicated in the book of Esther. The king, well, we'll get there eventually, but the king who he failed to kill when Samuel came to him in 1 Samuel 15, I want to say. 1 Samuel 15, when Samuel the prophet comes to him and says, "What is this bleating of sheep? The Lord said to go kill the Amalekites and then to destroy them, utterly wipe them from the face of the earth." He didn't kill King Agag. And we find that Haman, the guy that will show up in chapter 3, is Haman the Agagite. So he is from the lineage of Agag, which is fascinating. Okay. Also, this goes back to this battle, this giant reversal, this giant solution, this end of the road one of the final books of the Old Testament is dealing with a conflict that emerged back in Exodus 17? I don't have it written down, but I think it's Exodus 17. When the Israelites are coming out of Egypt, they come into the wilderness. The Amalekites rise up against them. We see it because everybody remembers the story. Moses is holding the staff of the Lord, and while the staff can be held up, they will have victory. What happens? Aaron and Hur come up on his sides, hold up his arms. You know that battle? You know that picture? Okay, cool. So this goes all the way back to then. That's what they're readdressing in this book, the book of Esther. Fascinating. So Shimeah, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the captives, who had been exiled by Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had exiled. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother, and now the young lady was beautiful of form and face, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. I want to point out that Mordecai just is a stand-up guy. Like, Mordecai is doing above and beyond. He has now adopted his uncle's daughter. Like, this isn't like his sister's daughter. This is like second cousin. He's like, "Oh, I will treat you as my own. Come to me, child." That's how I picture his voice. But this is a good man, and he comes from a famous lineage. He comes from a lineage of Saul. So he is a man of stature, most likely. He is a man of significance, and he is raising up one of his uncle's daughters. And so we are finding that we are coming into this giant reversal. So now we find out the king is lonely. He's asking for young virgins to come, and we see that this happens. It says, "So it came about when the command and the decree of the king were heard, and the young ladies were gathered to the citadel at Susa into the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken to the king's palace, into the custody of Haggai, who was in charge of the women. Now, Esther finds favor with Haggai." Now, it's kind of interesting to me because you've got the most beautiful women in the Persian Empire who are still virgins, so they're most likely very young, and they are very beautiful, and you've got this random Jewish girl just tossed in with them, and she immediately begins to find favor. Now, my initial thought immediately goes, she must have been a knockout. She must have been a straight knockout. But there's another part of me that says there was something different about her. There was something different about her, that just her beauty would not have set her apart from the rest of the women that had been gathered at the furthest outreaches of the Persian Empire, that there was something internal different about this young girl. And we're going to unpack it because I think it's really significant. Now, the young lady pleased him, found favor with him, and he quickly provided her with cosmetics, food, gave her 7 choice maids, king's palace, and transferred her and her maids to the best place in the harem. Esther did not make known to their people or the kindred Esther did not make known her people or her kindred, which means she didn't tell him she was Jewish, for Mordecai instructed her that she shouldn't. Every day, Mordecai walked back and forth in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and how she fared. Now, when the turn of each young lady came, okay, I want to point something out. When things begin to happen in the earth, like reversals, and all of us are sitting here going, where is God? This is not a good situation for Mordecai and Esther. I just want to point this out. I think we read this and we glorify it. We turn this into some like incredible magical story, but the truth of the matter is, this could go really, really bad for Esther. She could basically not please the king and be a sex slave for the rest of her life. Like that's the other side of this coin. And so Mordecai is now her dad by proxy, right? Raises this girl, adopts this girl, brings her into his family. One of the things that begins to happen, I'm just going to point this out and I'm going to leave it there for you guys to chew on because I've been noticing it in my own life, that when things are going and they're not going the way I thought they were, guess what I try to do? I try to control everything. Mordecai pacing back and forth every day, sun up to sundown, trying to peek his head inside the palace. Is that her? Nope, that's not her. What's going on with Esther? Anybody seen Esther in there? Anybody got a news on Esther? What's going on with Esther? How's she doing? Is her cosmetics coming through? She's in her 6 month of oil of myrrh and frankincense. How's it going? Is it soaking into her skin? Sometimes she gets sensitive skin down on her legs. Can you make sure that gets rubbed in real well? You know, he's so concerned. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been here for the last 2 weeks. Every smidget detail of whatever God is doing in my life, I just, don't let it come out too quick. Don't let this happen. Well, make sure these people don't find out. All of these things. And I begin to turn into this giant controlling fool. And we begin to see that when we begin to try to control every aspect of what God's doing, sometimes it blows up in our face. Sometimes it doesn't go the way we thought it would, even though we're just trying to make sure that this doesn't go badly. I'm just trying to make sure Esther gets picked, because if she doesn't get picked, not only am I not going to be able to spend a lot of time with her, she's not going to be in the best living conditions. She's going to be in the palace, but good Lord. Like we remember chapter 1, right? We remember what this guy was like. Okay. And so Mordecai finds himself pacing every day, wondering what's going on with his sweet Esther. And in the evening, she would go in. This is how the process would go. The young lady would go into the king in this way. Anything that she desired was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would go in, and in the morning, she would return to the second harem, into the custody of Shahashgaz. Boy, they don't make these names easy, do they? Shahashgaz, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not again go into the king unless the king delighted in her, and she was summoned by name. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, came to go into the king, she did not request anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the women, advised. I might be projecting this out a little too far, but I feel like I can say it. There's probably, how many would you think? Just take a random guess. How many women do you think were gathered? How many young virgins were gathered for the king? Hundreds, easy. Maybe thousands are gathered in the palace. Now, this is not a quick process, you know what I mean? It's a whole night, right? So if there's hundreds, we're talking at least a year of, and that's if my man's got the energy, right? Okay, I'm just tossing out all the details that crossed my brain this afternoon. because it was fascinating to me, because I was like, holy cow, she doesn't know when she's going to be. She has a year of preparation before she even is in line to go see the king. And so this may have taken years of process. We know it at least took one, but I feel like the chances are she like got done with the process and like night one was like, Esther, come on down. You know what I mean? Highly unlikely. She comes running down the aisle. Woo! I'm going to spin! Sorry. Why do I picture King Ahasuerus looking like Bob Barker? That's the problem. Sorry, Jay. But she is in the midst of feeling probably a lot like a lot of us feel right now. I have no idea when I will even know if this is going to go good or go bad. I feel like I'm floating. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I don't know which way is up. But this is the thing that gets revealed in the midst of these moments. Those are just your judgments about the Lord hiding you. Because she's in the midst of thousands, doesn't know when she's getting called, but she's in this place where at any day, now that my year process is up, I could be called. And do you want to know what often happens when we're hidden? We just grab for anything that will make us feel human. Right? We're just like, give me that. Why did I take that? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. But I look at Hadassah, I look at Esther, and I get to this moment where she's not been fantasizing, dreaming, talking to people about that which she's going to bring into the king and wow him. I imagine some walked in with tigers. They were like, look, I have tamed this beast. I shall tame you, King Ahasuerus. You know, like, I don't know. I'm just saying, I would be thinking and dreaming and all of these things. And what is she doing? She, instead of taking, she's willing to be given something. She trusts someone else. Oh, I find this to be like the most impactful thing right now, because I'm like, this is what we actually all really need when we're hidden. We need to receive from another. And she models something so beautiful in her hiddenness. She's unwilling to take, she's unwilling to grab a hold, and she's willing to receive wisdom. That is what we all need in the seasons of hiding. We need wisdom. Hey, bud, you shouldn't be distracting yourself with that. Hey, bud, I know you're frustrated, but that's not going to help you get along further in the process. You should just wake up and say yes again. His mercy's new tomorrow. Tomorrow could be your day, Esther. Tomorrow could be the day everything changes. Tomorrow could be the moment that you don't know what is coming, good, bad, or indifferent, but tomorrow will be the day. You just got to keep saying yes. And you got to be willing to receive the way she was. I got a lot to cover. Okay. She goes in. Now, when it was Esther's turn, the daughter of Rebekah, she found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Esther was taken into the king to his royal palace in the 10th month, which is in the month of Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. It says this, verse 17, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She found favor and kindness with him. Oof. This guy's not a good dude, and she finds kindness. Oh, what a reversal. Massive reversal, right? Massive reversal. Listen, what you think is coming for you could be an entirely different outcome. Where you are right now, feeling floating and doing all of these things, listen, you're anticipating rejection and a life of sex slavery and hellish for the rest of your life. But really what you're about to have is favor and kindness. If you're willing to just keep going. If you're willing to just say yes. than all the other virgins. So he set the royal crown on her head, made her queen instead of Vashti. This is one of the reversals I was going to just point out for us, because then the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet. Oof. He's like, I'm not just going to show you favor. I'm not just going to show you kindness. I'm not just going to make you queen. We're going to party together. Esther's banquet for all of his princes, all of his servants, and he made a holiday for the provinces, and he gave gifts according to the king's bounty. He did that so that the whole empire would love her. Isn't that awesome? He literally gave gifts to the people because this is all coming from your queen. Sweet God, that's dope. Someday I hope to be rich. I can be like, love my wife. You shall. This is all from her. Actually, she'd give it before I could. So when the virgins were gathered together, So when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not yet made known her kindred, the people. Didn't tell him she was a Jew. Even as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther did what Mordecai told her, as she had done when under his care. Oof. You guys, I'm just going to let that one sit there for a second, but just understand, she was continuing to honor her father in the midst of all of this. Like, there's such a beautiful submission that comes from this girl. Like, we could all learn something. Okay. This is the last piece before we dive in to the next chapter, but it says this, and this we got to cover because it puts all of the players or all of the characters into the story and positions them right where they need to be for the grand reversal. Okay? In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, remember, trying to control everything, but Bigthan and Teresh, I'm like, why do they sound like two bodyguards in D.C.? Two of the king's officials from those who guarded the door became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. But the plot became known to Mordecai. He told the queen Esther. Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name, and now the plot was investigated and found to be so, and they were both hanged on the gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. All right, this is important. This is important because Mordecai does a reversal within himself. Okay? Do you understand what Mordecai did? Mordecai saved the life of the man who took his daughter. Mordecai forgave the man who took his daughter, who took her virginity because he could, ran the risk of her becoming a concubine in the palace for the rest of her life, or until he was done with her. And he hears of a couple of guys who are super close to him that are going to kill him. And he doesn't let it happen. That is a massive reversal. His heart stayed tender and true to the Lord regardless of the circumstances going on in his life. I can't be that honest. I can be honest and say that I don't know if I would have turned him in. I would have been like, yeah, kill that fool. How can we help? You guys need the rope? I got garbage bags, duct tape. What you got? Yep. You guys need a bigger gun? I got you. I don't own a gun. But if I was Mordecai, I would. I think this is so fascinating because his forgiveness is what ultimately sets up the opportunity for the largest reversal that they don't even know is coming. Yes? Well, I mean, that's like saying play the lottery and if you lose, you die. I don't know if I'm playing the lottery. I mean, I could run the risk of being a millionaire for the rest of my life, but I also might be a sex slave pimped out to the king's buddies every night too. Yeah. Well, I mean, they all got taken to the palace, but I mean, you got to ask yourself the question. She's pulled from her family at probably, I don't know. I'm going to take a massive guess there because I don't know. 16? It might even be younger, might be a year older, but we're talking about a teenage girl getting pulled from her only father figure after her parents both died and abandoned her, and now she's got to go ahead and make a king satisfied? I can't imagine I want my 16-year-old daughter trying to stand up to that pressure. And if not, she becomes a sex slave. I think we glorify the story. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it because we're able to look backwards and say, holy crap, God was on the whole thing. No. I mean, well, we're going to, we're not going to make the nation look bad. Read 1st and 2nd Chronicles. That's not exactly how it unfolded. That was just how they wanted to make the kingdom in Jerusalem sound. They had to make it look stately in kingdom. They leave out all the negative details. You read 1st and 2nd Samuel and you're like, this is not in Chronicles. There's a reason. Because that was inside the palace. So when we're talking about this story, like it's going to be retold in a way, I'm not sure. I don't know if the details need to be said. I can tell you from a human, because she was one, I can't imagine she was super comfortable, just to be honest with you. I know I'm implying something into the text, but I'm just trying to say, like, unless the Lord was literally cloaking her and not letting her feel anything, which I don't think the Lord ever does, she's not exactly excited, but at the same time knows what she has to do. I don't know. Maybe. You're no, it doesn't. I mean, that's implying as much into the text maybe as I am. But I'm just saying, in my mind, I don't picture this being something. Do you? I mean, do you, Jay? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm implying too much, but I'm more or less thinking through this from the perspective of what would it be like for any 16-year-old girl? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, second group. Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bill. I never even thought of that, but geez. Well, anyways. Yeah, I'm not sure, Money. I mean, like I said, I'm not saying, I'm not sure she was super excited. I'm not sure. Oh, well, yeah. I think that's the beautiful part about the story. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. I hear you 100%. Yeah. I mean, the interesting part about it is that most of what you read concerning Esther and also the Jews that were still in Susa or still in Persia were kind of Jews that had semi-abandoned the faith because they already had the opportunity to go back to Jerusalem and they passed on it. They were like, Zerubbabel's already been back. This book happens, in between, Zerubbabel and Ezra. So you've got a whole massive contingent of Jews who are like Hasidic, right? Like the Reformed Jews back in Jerusalem trying to establish culture again because they're allowed to. And, Esther and Mordecai are still there. So it's, again, more speculation, but there's a lot of writing from really, really brilliant commentators that make a massive statement that, like, she was known by Hadassah, but, like, Esther was also maybe her name, and that was her Persian name that she went by while she was in the city. So, fascinating. But I hear you. Understand. So, all right, chapter 3. All the players are in position. I like this, okay? Everybody's been put into their position. God has orchestrated Mordecai's heart to forgive and to release it. It says his name is written in the book of the Chronicles of who've done good things for the king. And now Esther has been crowned queen, and she's sitting on the throne, and she finds herself being the most favored and beautiful woman. Now it's been confirmed in all of the empire. That question we don't have time for. We don't have many time for any questions tonight since I am way pokey. All right, chapter 3. Chapter 3 is this moment where now we meet the antagonist of the story, Haman, right? Haman, the Agagite, like we had mentioned, comes from the lineage of Agag, long time enemy of the Israelites. And now we find that he gets positioned as the second most powerful person in the kingdom. He is now over the princes of the empire, and he is told by the king that everyone, when they are in your presence, it's almost as if I am in their presence, they shall bow to you. He's going out to the gate. Mordecai's out at the gate. Mordecai's like, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation that comes from commentaries. This doesn't come from me, but they make speculations. Could he even ever bow to an Amalekite? Because it would be denying his Judaism. And so as Mordecai, a devout Jew, a person who loves the Lord, a parent who's a follower of Yahweh, he's not bowing his knee, not just because he's Mordecai, but because he refuses to bow his knee to man, because he's a follower of Yahweh. But more importantly, the man's an Agagite, and he's an Amalekite, and they are like chief enemies of the nation of Israel. Okay, so now you've got Haman goes to the king, paints this horrible situation where he goes before the king, and he's like, hey, this guy's not bowing his knee. They celebrate. They've got other laws that they don't follow you. He's not bowing his knee to you. And that's when the king's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Takes off his signet ring. This is the symbol of authority and power. Same, signet ring, prodigal son. He's giving you the position of power. This is the ring that they would stamp into clay or wax that they would sign the king's edict. So basically, he's got the authority to do what he'd like. Very interesting, though. He betrays the people, the Jewish people, with silver. I thought that very messianic, similar to Judas betraying Jesus. We get to this moment now, chapter 4 or chapter 3. This is where the main conflict emerges. You've got this situation where a king makes edicts and laws on a whim. Right? We know chapter 1, he's like, this lady disrespected you. And he's like, we should make an edict that all women are terrible. He's like, yes, do it now. The problem with that in the Persian Empire is edicts, once they became law, they became irreversible, even by the king. So you've got a king who's making laws on a whim that are irreversible even by him. So it's not like he's making, some great decisions. So Haman, when he gets the authority to basically kill off the Jews, institute Haman's final solution, he's basically giving Haman the ability to do something that's irreversible. And so now we see why reversal is such a massive theme within the text. Because this is supposedly irreversible. And so now God begins to do what only God can do. Chapter 4, Esther learns of what has become, what has happened. She finds out, Mordecai finds out first. He strips himself and puts himself in the posture of repentance to the Lord, sackcloth and ashes. Is also interesting. He's not allowed to be close to the palace now because he's in mourning. Only happy people close to the king. If you were sad and you had some gnarly emotion, you weren't allowed to come through the king's gate. So in the story in chapter 4, when Esther goes, send these clothes to Mordecai. Do you want to know what she's saying? She's saying, I want to see my dad. She's saying he'll be allowed to come into the king's gate, and then I could potentially go talk to him, but I can't leave the palace. I can't go out the king's gate, and he can't come in the king's gate. So guess what happens? She grabs one of the eunuchs. She sends him out to him. Mordecai tells her everything. This is where commentators get kind of interesting. They're like, Mordecai must have been someone. Because a regular Jewish person that's just in the citadel would not have known the information to the detail that he knew. It says that he had a copy of the edict. He had a copy of it. He knew exactly how much money was being paid to the king at the hand of Haman to allow all of this to take place. He knew every smidget detail of what was going on. And then it says this. Oh, yeah, okay. We're going to read the famous passage. All the king's servants and the people of the provinces know that for as many women who come to the king, to the inner court, who has not summoned, he has but one law, that he be put to death, unless the king holds out his golden scepter so that he may live. And I have not been summoned to come to the king for 30 days. So if she waits, the Jews get annihilated. If she goes before the king, she runs the risk of dying. Oof. They related Esther's words to Mordecai. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. Remember, Mordecai's not coming into the king's gate. So they're not talking. They're talking through a messenger. Do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews, but from another place. Man, this guy Mordecai knows the Lord. He knows Yahweh. You want to know why? Because he's like, listen, I know that even if you don't do this, you might not be delivered. He might kill you too, but the truth of the matter is this. I know Yahweh. Somebody else will rise up and set us free. See, this is the thing that we have to understand. God would love to use us all. But we got choice in all of this. We've got choice in every single command, every single little prophetic thing he drops into your prayer time, every little passage of scripture he leads you to. You've got the choice of whether or not you want to listen to it and obey it, or whether or not you don't. But guess what? It doesn't mean Yahweh's not powerful. It means Yahweh will use someone else. But Esther, what an incredible Mordecai. Gosh, we all need a Mordecai in our life. He says, and who knows whether or not you have attained royalty for such a time as this. Oof. Blah. Esther's response is one of the most incredible responses. I think I've always thought Mordecai's moment here was so powerful. This is the moment we all know about in this book. But her response is so interesting to me because I think it's so beautiful, because this is what we all need when our moment gets called. When our moment of, this is why you were created. This is what you were born for. This is what all of the time, between this time and that, we see it come from Jesus as well, right? He says, what am I supposed to say? That this hour has come, take this hour away from me? No, all of the hours have led to this very hour. What does he ask? Come be with me and pray. What does Esther say? I'm going to go into a fast. You guys can't be with me in the palace, but what I need you to be is with me in the spirit. And so I want you to fast, not because our fasting is some dutiful work that's going to shift the heart of God. No, what it is I need you to be with me, because if you're not with me, I'm not sure I can do this. And she says, reply to Mordecai, go assemble all the Jews who are found in the capital Susa and fast for me. Oof. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night and day, and I and my maidens will do the same. Oh, she's saying, be in the same spirit with me. She's saying, I'm going to posture myself this way. I can't do this alone. I'm going to ask my maidens to do it with me, but that may not be good enough. I want you to grab every Jew that will listen to you and tell them to not eat and not drink, because I promise something's going to happen in the spirit where I feel so confident to step before this king, risk my life, and ask him to do something that only I can do. Oof. And thus I will go into the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and did just as Esther had commanded. Whew. She was saying, this is not to change God's mind. This is to feel with me. This is about feeling the feeling of togetherness. Because I wrote this because we can lay aside a basic function of eating to be together. Togetherness is a huge part of the community of faith entering into redemption and reversal of all things. This is why we've not seen the reversal of things that we've hoped to reverse, because we've thought, you're the Esther, go do it. Hey, if you die, somebody else might get raised up. But we've been unwilling to be with people in the midst of them stepping into places that only they can step into. Maybe it's jealousy. Well, I want to be used by God like that. This is a massive error in the church today. Like we do a good job of it here at NewSong, but I want you to know the Tuesday fast is not so that your breakthrough comes. Ugh, sorry. I got taught that's what fasting was for. It's okay. I used to fast 40 days. Lord, I need to be in full-time ministry. I just tortured myself. Felt as close to God as I ever had, but that's probably because I weighed $165 and I was literally like dying. I was closer to him than I was before. In fact, we have become so independent, we feel we can make massive decisions on our own apart from the community of faith. Whew. Esther could have said, I've reached this place of power, it is my time. But instead, she says, I can't do this alone. Oh, my Jesus. Yeah, I know. I don't like it either. I'm going to have you ask one question. I'll just have you just bunch into groups. I'm going to have you be vulnerable. Sorry. But I want to cultivate some togetherness. We've done this plenty of times. And you didn't get the first two questions, so be grateful. I want you to pray for one another. I want you to pray for strength. I want you to pray for focus. And I want you to pray for timing. Because you can be vulnerable if you'd like and share what you feel like you're in, you know, what season it is. Difficult, good, easy, painful, facing difficult things. Things are coming up from your past. I don't know. I'm just saying you can be vulnerable if you'd like, but I think if we're willing to be with one another, we'll all be much more in the will of the Lord, and we'll also all have a lot more strength to say yes to tomorrow. Right? And so just break into groups. You guys know how to do this. We do this every Wednesday. If you've not been here before, sorry, bro. We break into groups and we just pray for one another. It's real simple. You one other person, you can just do it with Carson behind you or in front of you. You can do it with the guys behind you. You guys can all bunch together and do a group of 5. I don't care. But it's real simple. No specification of number. It's just to get together, talk about what you need, and just pray. It's real easy. All right, I'm just going to pray, and then I can dismiss you. If you want to go, you can go. Oh, I didn't say something good. Sorry. Oh no, it's just interesting that the woman we praised last week for standing up to the king, being her strong self, and then we have another person who this week submits to that same person, but yet both of them are powerful. You know? And that's why we can't judge, because there's no comparison, because one was instructed by the Lord to stand up to a powerful person, and that was her call. And the other person, also a woman, submits to him, and that's her release of power. But both equally powerful. And so in the midst of this, we can't forget that our lives all look differently. All of our postures and behaviors from the Lord and our anointings operate differently. And so that was what's at the top of the page, but I didn't get to it. So let's pray, and we will see you guys next week for Michelle Dant will be teaching. And if you've never heard Michelle Dant preach, she's really good. She used to be a regular preacher at a ministry that I helped host a couple years back, and she's just got a dynamic voice. So she'll do 5 through 5, 6, and 7, and then I will close us out with 8, 9, and 10 in 2 weeks. So it should be fun. All right, so let's just pray. Father, we thank you for just your word. We thank you for just how good you are. We thank you for the community of faith. We thank you that we don't have to do this alone, and that we've got brothers and sisters all around us willing to be with us, whether they're walking day by day with us or whether they're just willing to be with us in spirit, a phone call, a text message, Instagram message, whatever. Lord, we thank you for just the yes to receive from you in our hidden season. Father, we ask for the wisdom to come forth. We ask, Lord, that we would be reminded that you are in the midst of all of this, whether we think you are or don't think you are. We thank you that we're going to look back on this the same way we look at growth. Growth isn't fun when it's going on. Reversals aren't fun while they're happening or before they've happened, but we're going to look back and go, you were in the midst of it. And so, Father, we thank you, and we ask, Lord, tonight, give us faith and eyes to see and ears to hear what the Spirit of the Lord is saying in the earth today. We love you so much. In Jesus' name.